My name's Kelly Lucas. I'm the mum of Johnny Grimstone, who is a beautiful little man who's been through one hell of a journey. His story started back in 2010. We found out that Johnny had a very rare heart condition, which was going to basically affect him for the rest of his life. Johnny was born a month early, and he was born on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, or around 5:15, and we were in the hospital system, so they knew that there was some issues with him. He was rushed down to PICU, which is a paediatric intensive care unit, and he was in a bit of a dire state for a little while. We knew he was going to have an open heart surgery, but we were thinking it was going to be maybe in 2 weeks after he was born, and it ended up being at 4 days old. So that was the start of his journey at Starship Hospital from day one. He came through his open heart surgery. He was around 8 hours. He was on bypass. He was absolutely phenomenal. We spent a month in the hospital with him while he was recuperating, and it was great to be able to bring him home. So about 20 months after that, the valve in his heart and the conduit that they put in his heart started failing. So they didn't want to do another open heart so quickly. So they wanted to look at doing what they call a catheter procedure, which is going up through his groin into his heart. At that point, they did do a catheter procedure, and his blood pressure dropped. And unfortunately, at the time, we didn't realise he had actually had a stroke. He did end up having to have the open heart surgery. So at this point, he had had 2 open hearts as well. So 2 weeks after that catheter procedure, when he was 20 months old, he started having focal seizures. His arms started shaking, and we started realising something wasn't quite right. It was around February we had the first MRI. That's when we had it confirmed that he had actually suffered from a stroke, and the epilepsy never really was under control. We tried so many different medications for him. It was just the next one after the next one, trying to increase the drugs to try and get the epilepsy under control. So months and months and months would go by, and he could have seizures sort of every day, and then we might get a gap for maybe a month or so, or 2 months, and then the seizures would be there again. About a year or so after that, we also got a diagnosis that he had mild cerebral palsy in his forelimbs, and he had quite severe tremor in his left hand. So we started noticing the different things that the stroke was having these issues with. So it was just sort of year on year on year on year on. There was just more and more kind of things started coming up, which was the side effect of the original stroke. So there was a lot going on for this very little boy. Learning was taking a little bit more time than normal. He was having trouble writing and reading, but just a beautiful personality and very, very funny. He had a very good sense of humour. Fast forward to May 22nd, 2017. This was pretty much the pivotal moment of Johnny's life and ours, and where everything changed. That was the night he had his prolonged seizure. He basically, I popped him into bed. It was around sort of 10 o'clock. He woke up and he vomited. I popped him in the bath, and he seemed to be just wasn't well. Got him out of the bath, and I was just cleaning up, and my mum was holding him and drying him off, and he just started having a seizure. And we've obviously seen these a lot before, so I went and got the diazepam and gave it to him, and Usually within 5 minutes everything's fine. Never had any other issues with it ever. This particular time he didn't stop seizing. So I gave him a second dose of diazepam and he still didn't stop. So we rang the ambulance. They arrived really quickly. It must have been another 10 minutes, I'd say. And they came straight in and gave him a different drug called midazolam. And that didn't work. Now that's the moment I started realising things were very, very serious. And we were bundling him into the ambulance, and they put me in the front seat. I remember it quite clearly. They didn't really want me in the back seat, in the back with them, because they were actually drilling into his shin bone to try and get a direct line and to put some more midazolam. So sirens all the way to the hospital. He was still seizing. That still wasn't working. And at this point, I'm just blown away, about what's going on. So we got to the hospital. They obviously wheeled him in. They tried him on another drug. I think there was a couple more. It's a bit hazy, to be honest with you, just because it was just such a stressful period of time. And it took it took an hour and 15 minutes to get the seizure under control. They were giving him oxygen the whole time, and so he finally sort of passed out. About 2 or 3 hours later, there was 3 hours later, he woke up and he was sort of a bit groggy, and then he just went straight back into seizure again. So they had to give him some more. That knocked him out. That was another 3 hours or so, I think, and he woke up again and he went straight back into seizure again. We were like, far out, this is nuts. So this was early hours of the morning by this point. And at that point, he passed out and he didn't wake up for 5 days. We literally just stayed with him, obviously, and just waited and waited and waited to see what the situation was going to be. He woke up 5 days later and he was blind, and he could only move his head like this. That's all that his whole body was knocked out. So we were in Starship for 2 months. He was rehabbing himself in a lot of ways. He couldn't stop. He spent a week just doing this, and it could be 10 hours in a day, and we had to give him drugs just to stop him, just to actually get him to rest. And this went on and on and on, and then he got to the sitting up, and he was going around in circles, and he was thrashing from side to side, that's right, and then he was doing circles, and then he was pulling himself up. So it was this crazy process, but he just could not stop, and that's actually still a bit of an issue today, where they've kind of labelled it ADHD, but it's his brain has been unable to really give him the messages that it's okay to sit down and just chill. So there's been ongoing issues with medication around that, and I don't know how many different drugs we've tried, but there's been a lot. It's also shown me that you have to very much be an advocate for your children when it comes to drugs, because he has a rare heart condition. A lot of the drugs that they were looking at giving him or prescribing to him couldn't be used with a child with a heart condition. It was a bit of a rock and a hard place, because we're trying to get him to stop so he could rest and also recover, but also we have an issue of his heart, which is huge, not being able to take and handle the drugs. So ongoing from there, there's been times where his blood pressure's dropped, and he's had to be on watch all night because his breathing's got so slow. And the drugs that we've been prescribed over the time has been quite scary, is a good way to put it. There's, unfortunately, with his particular situation, they haven't really come across this very much before, so I kind of liken it to darts in the dark when it comes to the brain. You just don't know what is going to work and what isn't going to work. It's just a really complicated situation. I'm very much wanting to try cannabinoid oil, which there's one available here in New Zealand called Sativex. So we have our fingers crossed that we can try and get Compassionate Grounds to use the cannabinoid oil. It's having very good results with people with Tourette's, and very much I'm hoping that that could be something that we can get across the line, but that's another battle that we will be undertaking now. Ongoing, it's quite fascinating. I was saying to his neurologist last week that he doesn't seem to have cerebral palsy anymore. He can run like a cheetah. His tremors have gone in his hands. We had the MRI results back, and unfortunately his entire brain has been affected by the seizure. So there's something to be looking at there. That is there something that could cerebral palsy be deleted? He's what he used to be, everything that he was is now the opposite, which is fascinating from a sort of research perspective. So that's something that I definitely would like to learn more about, and have people really look at Johnny and see if that's a possibility, and if it could help other people. And, you know, continue to support this little boy who's on this seems to tick all these very rare boxes, and this really very rare little journey of his.